Welcome to Wellness Radio with Dr. Jeanette-Gallagher as your host. Her show discusses topics of health, wellness, and spirituality, and is about discovering your place in this great universe, from your cells to the cosmos. Along with her guest, in casual conversation, she strives to ask the difficult questions that may be holding you back from a vibrant life, and shares new ideas that may inspire you to make a change in your life that you only can see in your dreams. And now, here is Dr. Jeanette-Gallagher.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Wellness Radio. This is Dr. Jeanette-Gallagher, and it's a pleasure to have you with us this evening. Tonight, we are going to be talking about how are we navigating our path in life. What are the obstacles, the pitfalls, and perhaps maybe those big sinkholes that just seem to take us out? How are we navigating when something in our world is a little bit different? We're not the picture of perfection, who is these days, but we also, too, would like to accept what are our limitations, or what are the gifts we were given to learn how to do something differently, or even perhaps how can we learn that there are different ways that other people are also navigating the world. My guest today is John Samuel. His book is Don't Ask the Blind Guy for Directions. And I wrote it right in the front of the book, trying to fit into a picture of a limited world, which is, trying to fit into a puzzle, instead of becoming open to the limitless options of the world, where you create your own picture of you and your place in the world. Many people will say, I can't do that. I have obstacles. I'm not able to do it. And they just sit down and wait. And they just feel like they're held back or something's not working right. I mean, even the thoughts in our minds can take us there, and also our physical disabilities. John will be sharing with us today about his eyesight. And I think this is very important because what do we see in the world? What do we want to fit into the world? And is the world coming to us from the outside, or can we create our world from the inside? John, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jeanette. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so happy to have you. John, I forgot to tell you, but I have very low vision myself. And your book, the printing, I'm going, oh, dear, I can't read this. And it was so small, I said, I got to tell John in his next printing he needs to put bigger type.
No, I appreciate that feedback. It's so funny because, you're right, because we try to be as accessible as we could, but, we try to make the audiobook as well. But you're right, the actual text, not being able to see, I didn't know what it looked like. So thank you for that feedback.
Right. Well, I think that's also a perfect example. What you reflect in your book is that everybody has a different variation of what they can see, what they need to hear, and how they navigate the world. I mean, I'm going, oh, that's hard to see. But I kind of got a different thread throughout the entire book, about your story. And when others will say, but I need to read all the words, so I will know how to feel and go through his path so that I can create something like that for myself. But that's not necessarily at all what you're saying, even your title. Don't ask a blind guy for directions. You had a path that you got where you're going. Others, they may hear your path, but that was not meant for them to also follow the same path. What we're talking about today is inspiring others to find their own path, yes?
That's exactly right. Because I always thought there was a specific journey for me, but my journey is unique to me. My story isn't necessarily unique,
right,
but the journey I took is unique. But every one of us has our own unique journey, and we just need to, find that ourselves.
I think the most powerful sentence in the whole book, it says, I have been searching my whole life for career, belonging, accessibility, and equity. And I wrote on the bottom of that page, what you were really seeking was to be seen for who you are, not for what you can see.
Exactly, right? Because I always thought that this perception, I always had this mask that I was wearing. And all I wanted was people to see me for who I was. And that's really what I think we all want, right? It's not anyone, not just people with disabilities, but I think it's every single one of us is looking for that.
Don't you think that others needed to also be blinded by some of their senses to be able to say, I have more senses that I can touch and feel in the world? Let's talk about when you had climbed the mountain. You were struggling against it, still trying to fit into that square peg, round hole kind of idea, and you're refusing to be able to own up to it. But once you did, they were kind of like, okay, if I closed my eyes, what would I need? And they were able to guide you even better, perhaps?
Yeah, for sure, because I think that's what it is, right? It's like we think that there's one way, and we get blinded. We have blinders on throughout our lives, right?
Yeah.
We think that, we use what we have. And it's even in the business world, we talk about competition is a good thing because it causes you to think about other ways of doing things. And I think in life, we have to think about, we may do something the same way every time, but is that the most efficient and effective way? Maybe not. And only once we, kind of get outside of our comfort zone will we really find, and try new things. And that's kind of the case with me in the mountain, and I think throughout my journey.
Well, let's talk about hope also, too, in your book. And I go, where does hope come from? And I wrote also under it, I said, is the journey out of something or into something? So are you trying to find a life and create a way out of your disability, or, as you call it, or are you trying to find a way into your heart and how to fulfill your life with who you really, truly are?
Yeah, I think it really is about, going into it, right? Because, I don't think, initially I thought I was always trying to run away from it, right? It was always out of the disability. Despite the disability was just it's a thing I did not want to acknowledge. And I think that's, in many ways, many people think disability is a bad word. But I don't think it's a bad word. It's not a dirty word. It's part of my identity, but it's not my whole identity. And the moment I embraced it and leaned into it, it really changed. And that word hope, it really came from when I talked. It's interesting. I take Uber drivers now because I can't drive, and it's interesting. A lot of people who are Uber drivers, it's not like they didn't aspire to become an Uber driver. There's something in their life that's causing them to want to be an Uber driver. They need to, right? They need some extra cash. Maybe they have an extra bill. Maybe they split up with someone and they want to be able to get out. There's different reasons. And it was interesting that whenever I shared my story with Uber drivers, they would tell me, thank you so much. I needed to hear this. And I realized that this word hope is that, it's something that we're looking to get into. We want hope. We want that there is a brighter future out there. There is something out there. And, and I think it really came from those conversations with Uber drivers and I put it in the acknowledgments how important those conversations were, because my initial title I thought about was a love note to all my Uber drivers, because it's my way of giving thanks and paying it forward. But, I just want to have, no matter what challenges are going on in your life.
I think it's so interesting when you talk about the Uber drivers, because it's about being able to connect with people. That's what their connection is. Sometimes some people say, man, I just wanted to get out and have somebody to talk to. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. Yep.
Right. And then what you're actually doing is you're actually seeding other people, because when you share your story, then the next person that gets in their car, they'll say, hey, did you think about this? So you are actually creating an exponential world of being able to, sharing that hope going forward, or the change, or whatever you might need to hear. And I also think about the word hope. And I always think of it as the word hand. In other words, a guide, a hand. Hope is, some people talk about God being their leader or whatever, or some talk about energy or spiritual leader or whatever it might be. And it's always that hand that is right next to you. So that's how I think of hope, pretty much. And when you said about the word disability, I have this list of words that I'm calling to kick to the curb words. You know, I think it's time, you know, we really start to evolve, because words that have been around, you know, that we've kind of used in jargon or we believe as truths or beliefs, it's time for them to evolve and get out of our categories, so to speak, and disability is one. And I really find I use the word unique abilities rather than disability. Because your unique abilities is you can sense and hear. You know, myself, I'm a medium. You know, I cannot tell you how many millions of times I've said in my lifetime, do you hear that? Do you see that? Oh, gosh, look over there. Oh, my gosh, I hear something. What is that all about? And causing other people to stop, look, and listen, yet they still couldn't stop, look, and listen. And they couldn't hear, and they couldn't see, because they weren't open to it. So what you're sharing, I think, by using the word disability, sometimes maybe switch it up to unique abilities, is others can say, oh, I didn't hear that. I didn't see that. And expand their own senses, perhaps?
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting perspective, right? Because you're right. I mean, often people, we just don't stop to think about what is out there. Right? I mean, like you talked about, you know, when I talk about how I can't see, people are like, "Oh, I'm so sorry," but to me, it's like, no, don't feel sorry about it, you know. And that was my mentality before I learned about it and understood like that it's not what's holding me back. Going back to what you talked about, that limit, right? It was a limit that I put on myself. But once I was able to look beyond that and realize like, oh, there's so much more I can do, and things that I can, you know, train myself. I can see, you know, I took time. It took me going blind to be able to see, right?
Yes.
And it was only after that I was able to see all of my other abilities and really, you know, utilize those. And I can empathize with what you're saying, and that's I like the perspective.
You know, I talk a lot about elders, end of life, people who are ill, and most of the time the elders will say, I can't get out and run. I know I've said that before. I can't get out and jog, and it kind of bums me out, you know. But I'm like, well, you know, we kind of sit back and we say, well, you know, then it's time for things to come to me. It's time for things to be able to come about. The grandkids can come visit. I can open up my window and watch the birds. I could put out some bird seed. I can bring things into me instead of always reaching out, going out there. So sometimes it's more about having a self-fulfillment, a full heart at end of life, versus always saying we need to go, you know, that whole thing, I need to have a house, a car, a legacy, all that other stuff, where that's the outside world again. So truly, sometimes when we hit a wall or a disability or an illness or something happens and you have a great loss, it's about being able to say, gosh, I must have been really way far out of my body, way far out of, you know, how I am really operating in this world. And perhaps this is guiding me back into what the real meaning of life is for me, specifically for me. And that's, I think, what everybody's personal journey is about, maybe. Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. In your introduction, you talked about, you know, kind of sitting in, like something happens and you just sit down, right? And when I started to, like, my sight really started to deteriorate quite fast, I stopped and I really sat down and I started to feel bad for myself. And I started to gain weight. I started to just have other ailments. And I was listening to a lot of podcasts because I could no longer see. And I was listening to one called How I Built This with Guy Raz. And he had a restaurateur named Jose Andres. And Jose Andres said something on it about his own journey. Yeah, he was looking for a job and he was sitting at home and he said, luck can't find you unless you keep moving. Right. And so this idea of keep moving, I started thinking about it, and it became my mantra. I started to do what I could control, and for me was doing push-ups at home. I made a fact that I'm going to do push-ups. I may not be able to walk outside, but I can do this. And it's similar to your example with the putting up bird feed. That's something you can do and bring things to you. And so it takes time to realize what can we do and not focus on what we can't do.
But I think also, too, in your book, you had written about the wreck, that you had. And I wrote on the side, God said not yet. I think a lot of times when things like that happen, we say, but now it's my end. I'll never be able to, those defeatist kind of words. But I think it's very important to state also, John, is that it's essential to have those feelings. Because if you don't have them, you don't acknowledge them. Sometimes if you don't wallow in the pot, so to speak, they may show up again later. So it's like, have your pity party, have the very deep, dark soul words, feel them very deeply. Feel like your humanness is going away. Because when the humanness goes away, then you can find that you're so much greater and you're operating from a whole different set of beliefs and rules and truths. Because the humanness is really the one that says, this is the picture you were given when you were a child of how your life would be. And yet you're going out and saying, you know what, I'm so much more. Yes?
Yeah. No, for sure. I needed those moments, right?
Right.
I needed those, and you're right, because I learned so much from it. And if you forget, because it's important, you have to remember those, because things will come again, right? And if you don't learn from those experiences, you're not going to be prepared the next time. And I think because I had to go through all those things, I have a new appreciation for everything else, right? And I realize that my journey isn't set, right? I'm in this journey going. But if there's other challenges that come up, I have my toolkit is stronger. I have more things, and I can appreciate all of the good things that are that I used to have blinders to. And so you're right. You have to remember those, and you have to have that pity party. You need to go through that. You need to.
Yeah.
You need to embrace that and just realize that it's only a moment, and you'll continue to move forward.
Right. Because I think we get stuck in the idea that you see it a lot with people around, 65, 70. Well, I need to be younger. I need to, this anti-aging thing, it's sort of like I'm not anti-anything. I am who I am.
Yep.
My arms, they swing and they sway, and, someone will make a joke about it, and I'll say, no, that's just my angel wings. Leave them alone. I think the idea is, can you be okay with yourself and honor and fully be unconditionally in love with yourself before this journey starts? Because if not, I think you will falter miserably being able to hit all the doors. And that's okay if you falter, because it will bring you back to where you need to be. You will get to one day where there's no longer pebbles to put in front of you. And when you get to the point, then that's a time you will say, who am I? What am I about? Maybe?
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, it's interesting you talk about that self-love, because and I think every stage of our lives has its own, we can fall in love with ourselves all over again, right? Mm-hmm. And we should. And, I often said that it took me falling in love with myself and first forgiving myself. Forgiving myself, then I could fall in love with myself, and then I could love others. But I think that's a thing that, just like, a loving relationship with a partner, it's something you have to renew all the time, right? And you have to fall in love with yourself all the time and love yourself at each stage. And because then you'll realize that, that's who you are. And if you can love yourself, then other things are, that's just added bonuses.
I loved the one sentence where it said that your girlfriend had left, Jessica. And your friend said, I'm sorry she left. And I went, oh, awesome. It was just an exit, but you knew where you were going on the highway. Your highway was already planned. She was just an exit. And if you had taken that exit, it might not have been who you were. You might have had to clip your wings to fit down the exit. You might have had to wear different shoes that might have hurt your feet. You might have had to walk into a wall, or whatever. Mm-hmm. So it was good that it was recognized as just that. She was just an exit.
Yeah.
And
we have lots of those throughout our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly, right? We have lots of those moments in our lives, right?
Yeah.
And it's important to realize that that's just part of the journey. And it goes back to that keep moving mantra of like, keep moving. This is just one piece of it, and it's not what's defining you. And you keep moving down your journey, and, but you're going to have these exits, but just be prepared.
But also, too, I think when going back to the idea of the exits, a lot of times people will say shame, guilt, regrets, And in other words, when they hit those spots, I'm less than, I'm not worthy, this value thing.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, they start to devalue themselves, and they start to have this collection of something. And I think when we, even as I'm saying it, you're devaluing the human story that you thought you were. So it's okay. Let it happen, Devalue that human that you thought you were, because you're more. So when you come to that, it's almost like a shedding process. It's like, I'm not this legacy. I'm not, John is not this blah, blah, blah that we write up as our obituary. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
John is just this loving soul, period. I mean, that's my obituary. I've already written it. Jeanette was a loving soul, period. And there's nothing else. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't want all of that other stuff. It doesn't relate to me. It isn't who I am. It's not how I walk my world in my path. And I think for you also, too, if you sat down and looked at it, you said, that's stuff. I'm not stuff. I'm John.
Yeah. Actually, I share a bit about this in the book, and I kind of gloss over a little bit. But it was a moment where I really, I was in Africa, and I was kind of getting ready to leave and come back to the U.S., and I had yelled at a colleague, and I had this just, I felt terrible, and just yelled at this colleague, and I realized I had to do something, and I started to meditate, and I started to really spend some time and to reflect, and I realized, I had been talking to someone who was helping with guided meditation, and we were talking about how I'm a soul, right? My exterior is just an exterior. I'm not this physical mass, but my soul is everlasting, and that's who I am. And that kind of, I think, has really changed my mindset on life, right? Is that when you realize that this exterior, what you see, me bumping into a wall, all that stuff, this broke my blindness, this is just the physical aspect of it. But my soul is everlasting, and it's perfect. And that took some time, and it's something I have to it's a process, right? You have to, it's not that you remember it once, you learn it once, and you're done. It's something you have to keep learning and keep reminding yourself of doing that. And it's something that I still work on it, right? I still feel shame. I still feel those things. But I have to take that time to breathe, and I've been spending more time meditating even now. Like in the last few weeks, I've been spending more time meditating and getting back to that moment and just reminding myself of that. And I think that's an ongoing process.
I think also, too, the concept of your book, I wrote, you deserve to experience, but you experience so others can learn, and therein you are the teacher. Yeah.
This kind of ties into something I talk a lot about, is proximity builds empathy. And it kind of goes, you're spending time with others. First, I had to learn myself, right? And then I was able to, I had to learn to have empathy for people like myself, understand, learn, and then I learned, and then I was able to then help other people. Because I needed to, if I didn't know how to help myself, how can I expect other people to help me? And that's something I had to learn and to work on. And it's been a journey on that.
But also, too, when someone asks you what you need, just as they did on the mountain, when you turn around, that's, for a lot of people, opening up and becoming vulnerable. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
A lot of times after surgeries, people need a lot of help and support. And there's no way they're going to open up and ask for help. I mean, it is what it is. And then they get sicker, then, things really just take a down spiral turn. Or people who move to a new area, or new mothers, or children who were just getting out of college. Everyone needs to know, what do you need? Yet no one will aspire to listening to what that is, because as soon as the question is asked or breached, immediately the other person uses their Rolodex and their filters to be able to construe the answer. And then it ends up being something else from their perspective. How many times did you say, well, I really need you to make some tea for me. How about that? And as someone who has never made tea before, will turn around and make it, and you'll say, but that's not the right way to make it. Yet, are we in gratitude of the process and be able to teach them and be vulnerable? Or do we just shut down and say, they did it wrong and I'll never ask again, or they're just not living up to whatever they can help?
Yeah, I think it's the latter that we typically go towards, right? But we have to go to, and that's something I think with my having a disability, something I've learned is that if I ask for help, people don't know what they don't know, and they may do something.
Right.
And before I was happy. Well, okay, that's fine. I'm not gonna ask anymore.
Right.
But as my journey has gone on, I've learned that, hey, they don't understand. It's nothing again. I'm appreciative of their actions, but I also need to support them. I need to teach them how best to help me, because then we're going to have the best outcomes for all of us. And that goes back to being vulnerable, and also putting aside that pride, putting aside that feeling of like not wanting to ask for people for help or relying on other people. And it's not that. It's the more that you can, improving that communication, you can get what you need, and then the other people around you can also be able to, feel good about that they're doing the right thing that's helping you the best way. So I think it's a two-way communication.
In essence, isn't it taking us back to what I had just said about being the teacher? Because if you step into the point of being a teacher, you are in service. If you believe your life is being in service, then you no longer are looking to satisfy John or Missy or Jane or Bob or Bill. And you're not looking to have that other story out there. You just say, my position from my soul and spirit is to be in service. Everything I do is in service. So if I'm asking for help, someone is coming to me because they're willing to learn. They're willing to open up. They are willing to learn something else. They are willing to be vulnerable themselves. It might just be that they were actually able to come to you in the first place, and you've already taught them something. Not to be afraid, not to have fear. Not to have fear. You're not this thing that's going to lash out at them or not understand them. And maybe it's their own fears that they're coming to you to be able to learn how to dance with when you've already learned how to work with your own fears. Something maybe as deep as that?
Oh, for sure, right? Because I think that the aspect of being a teacher and being in service is such a crucial piece of that, right? Because it is that we have to. And again, I'm talking about the fear of doing or fear of saying can often hold you back from, doing so much. And then other people are fearful of saying the wrong thing. So it may hold them back. So as long as we can be always in service, we can reduce that. So I totally agree with you.
I wrote on the bottom of one page, darkness comes in all forms. I had this concept that I've been sharing, being as a teacher in service, for many decades, and I've shared it now so many times on the radio, and I said, I really have this dream that humans would be blinded to all of their senses, and they would come into a room, and all they would do is join hands. They would not be able to smell or see or hear or all of those other senses, but they would merely be able to just touch and feel the energy of the human being next to them. How profound would that be? you know, because so many people have so much judgment. I mean, they lead with judgment. I mean, that is who they are. That is what they are. And, you know, we do it right from walking out our front door. Oh, it's hot. I need a jacket. Oh, it's cold. It's raining. Oh, that man is in the wrong place. The car is going the wrong way. Oh, my gosh, I smell something. I'm not ready for lunch. You know what I mean? And it's constant judgment in which we live. But if we are totally blinded by that, that is the most profound sense of touching the God energy in people. And when you do that, there's no going back. It's almost like the door behind you slams shut, and you can never again be that judgy all the time. Might that be something that we could teach others as going forward?
I think so. I mean, I think it is tough to learn what we've learned for so many years, but I think that's something we can strive for, right? It goes back to that, you know, going back to what we were talking about with the soul being perfect and we, again, if you don't judge, we take out those external judgments that we always have, those unconscious biases or those misconceived perceptions of what's going on, but we focus on the good. I think that's something we can all strive for and work towards, and I think that's something we should. But it is quite profound to kind of have that dream. It would be a beautiful moment to be able to do that.
I think we have examples of it, a touch of it, with people with Alzheimer's, people in COVID when they were in the hospital and you couldn't see them and they died on their own. That was all being separated from our kind of this little Rolodex going on in our head all the time, you know, that little film kind of thing. With people with Alzheimer's or dementia, you're kind of just sit in the moment. That's all you can do, you know. You may play your own stories and tapes and everything. However, you're just sitting there, what's left? I've had people even say, well, why should I even bother to visit them? I'm going, are you serious? You know? So are they so much more to you than just a story? Or are they just a story? Same thing when people were passing away on their own, going through the door, you know? And people would say, but I didn't this, I didn't that, da-da-da. I said, again, it's about you. What's about them? So the separation, I think, this deep separation of who we are and who others are has been continuing in the human society. Yet we're really striving to hope to bring this together, to believe we all are more as one versus separate, you know? So sometimes disabilities really push us. You can do this, I can do this. You can't do that, I can do that. Do you know what I mean? Those kinds of ideas.
Yes.
That's a whole lot of separation dogma going on. But if you could see it as, you know, hey, you know, we can join hands together, and together we could do this. Or we don't need this. It isn't important. We're so much more than that. That's the story that we're kind of trying to come to in the year 2023 is, how are we together? How are we all as one versus that total separation?
Yeah, shifting from the me to the we. And that's what we have to do, because, right, we focus it primarily on, you know, like going back to our own stories, whereas when we think about what we can accomplish together and our story together. Yeah, I mean, I never even thought about that, you know, when thinking about individuals with Alzheimer's or individuals, you know, who are dying by themselves, right? We put it back on ourselves. How does it make me feel, or how does it impact me? Whereas when we think about the we, and that's what, going back to what we initially were talking about, it's like, how do we have those non-judgmental experiences with each other is when we talk about the we of us.
Yeah, I think if we start to see everybody as one, in other words, if we truly have it said in our thoughts that we are eternal spiritual beings, right?
Yeah.
And the human is just this wetsuit we jump into, it's a human experience, then we need to own up to it. If we are spiritual eternal beings, then we're all part of this universal energy. We're not that human story that keeps playing out in front of us, that we see on TV, that we keep dressing up as every day. So as we start to unencumber ourselves, we try to let things go. We kind of, quote, live off the grid, so to speak. You know, we declutter, whatever that might be. I think that's when we start to let go of things in our mind, in the stories. I mean, when I have trouble being able to see something, you know, I'll say to the kids, "Can you read me a story today?" I didn't say, you know, "Oh, my eyes aren't working today. You know, I can't see that word." No. Hand the book to the child. Say, "You know what? I would love to have you read me today." I didn't need to have all the other story with it, perhaps.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's when I talk in a similar situation, right? It's you know, when I'm reading with my own kids, you know, when I can't read, you know, what we do is we come up with stories together, right? So they know that this is how we do it together. We will do something different. I don't need to do it the way that we need. That's what was, you know, by looking at a book and reading it, we can figure out something different together to do it. And you know, our journeys are in parallel with each other, and it works really well.
You know, I think also to the idea of, you know, disease in the past few years has really separated people. I'm not going to touch anybody, you know, I'm not going to go near anybody or anything. But really, I think the idea of reaching out your hand and just say, "Guide me." That's faith. Yep. That's hope. That's allowance. That's being vulnerable. I know for myself, you know, when you just touch the hand of someone who's ill or someone who's afraid of death, when you just sit there for one moment, that's holding their hand in their heart, you know, just right there in front of you, and you're going, just sit. And you don't have to have dogma. You don't have to say you're right or wrong, or this is your limitation, or how dare you, and all that other story. Story goes away. And I think when story can go away, it's when we're able to see. When you you're able to see, and I think that's important. You see and you feel and you sense with something different than your eyes. You do it with your heart. Do you think that many times when you had people guide you around, it wasn't a matter of, they didn't ask, "Will it be okay if I hold your hand, will it be okay?" You know what I mean? It was like, that didn't even show up. It just, they were there. That's correct. I mean, so throughout my journey, I feel like there was, you know, sometimes I had my physical hand on someone who was there, but in many ways, there was an invisible guiding force with me, right? That's what was getting me through, because, you know, throughout my journey, there's so many times, but there was always somebody there, you know, or not maybe not a physical being, but there was a guiding force for me, and that I could feel. And I think that was helped me keep moving, because it was being led by the heart, and and it wasn't necessarily the physical, but there was something, and that came in forms of different things. It did come in the form of people. It did come in the forms of you know, other objects, but I think it was being led by the heart. Do you think in closing, John, we can say the limitation of life is fear, and fear is an illusion? However, it is part of the essential human journey to be able to see it for what it is. Oh, for sure, right? I think that fear limits us constantly, and it transforms into different things, and it does limit us. But it is part of life. It's something that we do need to look at it straight into its eyes and be like, here, I can't let you guide me, but you will be there, but you're not guiding me. And I'm going to learn from this. And only then will we be able to achieve that limitless experience that we're all destined for. I think also, too, the idea is that you can never prevent, or you can never construct or conjure up a life in front of you to be able to be in perfection. So I'm sure just you and I, as today, you know, there's many times I will say, "Oh my gosh, you know, I don't want to do that because I might fall," or Oh, I did it again. Oh, my gosh, I can't believe I did it again. I says, nothing is the same. It might appear as similar, but energy is never the same. And I think sometimes when we say, but I want to do all the prevention things, do you know what I mean? You know, I see my granddaughter, she gets on her bike and she just flies out in the street, and I'm going, oh, my gosh, I can't believe you just did that. Did you look? You know, my whole thing going on. And what I had to sit back and just say, this is present. Today is present. This is what there is. Instead of bringing my past into the present to recreate a future and say that's how it should be. So even so, you know, your vision is much, you know, on the lower end than mine. Mine is definitely doing the same thing. But what happens is that I understand this is today. This is what it is today. You know, I don't need to think of all of the worst scenarios going forward. I don't need to worry about what I'm missing or losing in the past. But I could say, this is my today. What's up today? Hey, today, you know, I did put a piece of paper, blank, you know, sheet of paper on the table every day and say, write today on it and say, hello today, what's up? And leave it go and let it create itself instead of saying, this is what it must be. How freeing might that be to live our life that way?
So true. It's so freeing, right? That it's a blank sheet of paper each day. And that's a gift every day, that we can wake up to a new blank sheet. And we can embrace and love that.
Yeah. Well, I think, John, as you shared your story today about your vision and about your story in your life, I think that many people will find inspiration, because whether you have any issues going forward, it could be that, hey, my shoulder's really hurting today. I can't do that. Well, what else? Okay, I see your shoulder's hurting. Would you like something? What do you need? Hey, maybe I just need massage. Maybe I need someone just to hear me say, I don't feel like going out and carrying those groceries today. Or, hey, you know what? I'm just enjoying my moment, touching it myself and saying, I have a body. It can still work. There's so many exponential, you know, possibilities in the world, and to be open to them. And what you and I share today are those opportunities, yes?
That's correct, right? I mean, we're all going through something, but we just can't let that stop us.
Yeah. We're not labels. We are not a collection of labels, right?
That's correct. That is 100% correct.
Yeah. Well, John, can you share with the listeners how to find out more information about your work?
Oh, thank you. People can visit me at www.johngsamuel.com. That's JOHNGSAMUEL.com. That's where you can find the book. It's on Amazon. It's all, you know, different formats. But I appreciate this, and I'm on social media at John G. Samuel. Again, JOHNGSAMUEL. But I appreciate this, Dr. Jeanette, and allowing me to share my story on this platform.
I'm so glad to have you, John. We thank you so much for being with us, because I think also, too, you know, as we read this and as we share this, we, too, can take what we need from it, but we can also help and share others. So I thank you so much for becoming the teacher and stepping in service.
Thank you.
If you'd like more information about John Samuel, again, the book is Don't Ask the Blind Guy for Directions. Please do click on the link on the bottom of today's show page to go directly to his website for more information. And it is about being able to step up, be heard, go out there. My gosh, if you walk into 100 walls, fantastic. You know, it's about being able to say, oops, and be able to say, what's next? What's coming down the road for me? And be in touch with something more than a human story. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Dr. Jeanette-Gallagher, and until tomorrow, have a great day.
Today we discussed many life-changing concepts. Who do you turn to, and how do you know what is best when faced with a health crisis? Dr. Jeanette is a patient advocate. She listens to the patient, the doctors, and the family, clarifies the health issues and concerns, then helps the patient make the best choices going forward. If you would like help implementing change into your life and health, we can talk and see where you are stuck and how to improve the quality of your life. Check the link on the bottom of today's show page or visit dr.jeanette-gallagher.com to schedule a phone appointment today.